So you're thinking about moving to Utah, and yet people are still leaving. I'm gonna share with you the top 5 reasons why people are leaving the state of Utah and why I still think it's a good idea to relocate to the Beehive State. Now, the first big reason is the job market. Now, just like a lot of people, relocating to Utah usually comes with some sort of job transfer. Now, the reason why a lot of people are leaving Utah is because of that imbalance between your job salary and the cost of living here in Salt Lake City. Despite the fact that we have record low unemployment rates, right now it's hovering in that low 2% range, there's still a big cost factor, and people don't necessarily have the income that they need in order to live in a more expensive state. Now, even though there's a massive growing tech sector, especially in the Silicon Slopes in Utah Valley, there's still certain industries where the growth of the job rate and the salaries don't quite match the cost of living in Salt Lake City. And for those reasons, a lot of people have to relocate to a less expensive market. Those salary disparities are often much bigger than you would expect in some other markets like California or Texas. And for this reason, Salt Lake City can be difficult to live in and support your family if you don't quite have the income that you're used to if you're maybe coming from one of those other states. Now, a second big reason, and one that I personally had before moving to Utah, was the overall religious influence. Now, 60% roughly of the population identifies as being part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that really culture and the history and the background of Utah is definitely embedded within living in Salt Lake City, whether it's the culture, whether it's the politics, or the overall conservative nature of the state. For a lot of people, there's just a little bit of hesitancy in wanting to move to a very religious affiliated culture. Now, because of this really heavy religious influence, a lot of people are concerned about some of the rules and some of the laws that might be different from where they're coming from. And that was certainly a concern for us before moving to Utah, and something we definitely had to get used to. Some people see this cultural influence play out throughout their overall lifestyle, whether it's the public school system or the liquor laws. You can really sort of see that impact in your day-to-day life, and something you definitely need to consider before relocating to Utah. There can also be some very heavy, I would call, community influence, and maybe something that you're probably not going to see anywhere else in the state. It makes Utah very unique. The fact that you have very strong, family-oriented, but very niche type communities where there can be perhaps a little bit more stigma or perhaps a little bit more influence within even the neighborhood that you're living in. And for a lot of people, it can be concerning if you're not part of that affiliation. They might kind of feel like an outsider. Number 3 on the list is the overall geography. Now, I can break this up into a few different areas. First, the weather. A lot of people are used to coming from markets or other parts of the country that's completely different than the type of environment we have here in Utah. Now, I personally moved here because I love the mountains, but for a lot of people, if you're used to an ocean climate or if you're used to being more in the Midwest, you're gonna get something completely different here in Salt Lake City. We don't quite have the humidity that you would expect in the Midwest and South. Definitely a good thing, but with that comes that dry mountain air. Now, Utah is the second driest state actually in the entire country. We have less rainfall than just about anywhere else in the country, and that can play an impact not only in your everyday life, but the agriculture. It can play an impact in your level of outdoor activities. Some people just can't handle that dry climate. We also have some air quality issues. Now, if you're coming from downtown areas where you're used to a lot of smog or poor air quality, that is definitely something we experience here, especially in the wintertime with the inversion layer. You can get just that pocket of pollution and smog in the valley because we're sort of trapped in this little bowl. Something to consider, especially if you have health issues such as asthma, or if maybe you're part of an older demographic and that oxygen level or that overall pollution could play an impact on your overall health. And because we're in that mountain environment, Utah also experiences a pretty high degree of wildfires. Now, of course, this can affect not only the safety of people living here, but also the overall air quality. Now, we don't get nearly as bad of wildfires as you might expect in places like California, but it's becoming an increasing concern, especially here in the Mountain West, and something to consider before making that move. Now I'm gonna mention the overall elevation. Salt Lake City sits at around 5,500 feet above sea level. Not an issue for most people, but again, if you have certain health issues, for a lot of older people that move here, sometimes they can struggle with those oxygen levels because we're at a higher elevation. If you're moving here from, say, the coast, it's definitely going to take a few weeks for your body to acclimate to that higher elevation before your body starts producing more oxygen. Now, the number 4 reason on the list of why people are potentially leaving Utah has to do with the limited nightlife / lack of entertainment. Now, Salt Lake City is actually a relatively small market. There's about 2 million people that live within the entire valley. Just to put that in perspective, Dallas-Fort Worth is like 8 million people. people. So you're talking 1/4 of the size of just that market in Texas. And because it tends to be a smaller area and a little bit less urban, there tends to be less nightlife in the Salt Lake City area, whether that's through our restricted liquor laws or just the fact that you can really only go out downtown Salt Lake City. The rest of the area is basically residential houses. If that's something that's really important to you, maybe consider before you move to Utah. Now, while me and my family have enjoyed a lot of entertainment, there are some limiting aspects to Salt Lake City. I'll give you a few examples. Yes, we do have the Utah Jazz, but besides that, we just got a brand new NHL hockey team. But even then, you could see that there are some other markets that have a little bit more things to do when it comes to sports or other professional franchises in a particular metro area. Salt Lake City is definitely growing. I mean, we are getting the Olympics in 2034, but the fact that we currently only have one of those major sports franchises can be a reason why people might look at Salt Lake City and say, it doesn't quite have the entertainment factor that I'm looking for. Now, because of the overall small size of Salt Lake City, we tend to have a little bit smaller and less options when it comes to entertainment. Whether that's concerts or things to do out in town, there tends to be a little bit less options in Salt Lake City compared to other places. Now, reason number 5, and one of the biggest reasons why people are leaving the state of Utah, is the housing market. Houses here are way more expensive than you see in other parts of the country. In fact, we're like $200,000 to $300,000 higher in our median sales price than the national average. If you look at just Salt Lake County, in the last, I'd say 30 to 90 days, our median sales price is well over $630,000. That is significantly higher than you would find throughout the country. Particularly in the last few years, you've seen home prices skyrocket in Salt Lake City. Part of that has to do with our close proximity to other major markets such as Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland. There's a lot of people that live in those coastal markets that are relocating to Salt Lake City. That has definitely increased our population. In fact, between 2010 to 2020, Salt Lake City was the fastest growing market in the entire country. Whenever you have an increase in population, but you have limited housing supply, you will see an increase in overall prices. And that could not have been more true than the pandemic, when we had record low inventory and record number of people moving here. This rapid population growth, coupled with our lack of inventory because there are so few places in Utah to actually build more houses, you've seen that massive increase in demand with record low supply really push our prices through the roof in the last few years. Another attractive factor that has caused the housing market to go nuts is the fact that we have really conservative and lower taxes than a lot of other states. Yes, we still have income tax compared to Texas and Florida, but our property taxes are relatively low. In fact, if you look at places like California and Oregon compared to Utah, a lot of people see that the property taxes are a lot less, therefore their monthly payment might be less, therefore increasing more people moving to the area. So those are the top 5 reasons why people are leaving the state of Utah. But let me jump through each one of these and explain why I don't necessarily think they'll be a deal breaker if you're thinking about relocating here. Yes, it might seem like there's an imbalance between salaries and job markets, but let me explain why the Wall Street Journal just came out with an article that explains Salt Lake City as the hottest job market in the entire country. You have so many businesses, from tech startups to other industries, moving to Utah. I think you're gonna see an overall increase in job opportunities in the near future. And I can say from personal experience, yes, there is a very heavy religious influence, but I think it makes an overall great community. And as more and more people are moving and relocating here from out of state, the diversity of the overall area is increasing. And yes, although there are some geographical challenges in Utah, I've noticed that a lot of my clients actually really appreciate the fact that we have 4 distinct seasons. Not only that, but when people relocate here, they tend to pick up new hobbies that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And although Utah isn't necessarily known for its nightlife, there is plenty of family fun activities and outdoor sports that people enjoy throughout the year. For mountain biking, skiing, and hiking, there's plenty of outdoor activities here in Utah. Now, as far as cost of housing is concerned, yes, Salt Lake City tends to be a little bit more expensive, but once you actually get into the market, hold on to your hats, because the appreciation here in Salt Lake City has been crazy, and that has been a huge influence in why people actually want to move here in the first place. On top of that, property taxes tend to be a little bit lower, and the fact that we have tons of grants and certain loan products that actually help people get into a house. And yes, the cost of housing is more than the national average, but because we have lower property taxes, it's going to make your overall mortgage payment lower, and the fact that we have certain loan products and grants specific for the state of Utah that can help you afford to get into a house. And in fact, right now, we would be considered in a very healthy market here in Salt Lake City. Our inventory hovers around 11 to 13,000. Most people would agree that that is a relatively healthy market for both buyers and sellers. Look, every market is gonna have pros and cons, but there's a reason why so many people want to call Utah home, and it's a reason why me and my family wanted to move here in the first place. Those reasons that I just went through, of course, there's going to be drawbacks, but I think there's a way to win in every category. Let's get a debate going in the comments. Comment below, why do you think people are leaving and why do you think it might be a good idea to stay in Utah? Now, if you want some more hot takes on what I think are the best and worst reasons for moving to Utah, make sure to check out this video. And don't forget to subscribe below so you can get the latest information about Salt Lake City. Now, if you have any questions or if you want to reach out to us, our contact information is below.